You have the call.
Thank you. Look, what we heard today, Deputy President, was the government in denial about the scale of economic challenges that Australia is facing. We had Senator Canavan ask Senator Gallagher about business insolvencies at a 4-year high. We had Senator Smith ask questions about the size of public sector spending, now at a high of 27.3% in the quarter, and the role of public sector spending in contributing to inflation. But what we heard from Senator Gallagher was that the facts don't support that the RBA was being misquoted, that public demand was being demonised and trumpeting a headline inflation figure. Now, it's taken me a while to figure out the meaning of this term gaslighting, but after a lot of discussion with my children, I think this was a textbook example of gaslighting, telling not only those of us on this side of the chamber but the Australian public that their lived reality, their lived experience of higher electricity prices, of higher inflation, of deteriorating living standards, of lower disposable income, of higher interest rates is not actually true. So we had Senator Gallagher say that COSBOA's figures were wrong, that the RBA didn't say what they've said, that the Productivity Commission, which has been warning about these things, is also wrong, and indeed the everyday lived experience of Australians is wrong. Let's look at the facts here, Deputy President. Insolvency rates in Australia right now are 25% higher than they were prior to the pandemic, 5.04% in October. That means that 1 in every 20 businesses is failing over the last 12 months, and Creditor Watch expects this to rise to 9.1% in the next 12 months. That is, 1 in every 11 businesses will be at risk of failure. Senator Gallagher's answer, the facts don't support that. We've seen now public sector spending reach a record of 27.3% of GDP in the June quarter. The average size of public sector spending in the decade prior to the pandemic was 22.5%. So we've seen government spending massively increase. Senator Gallagher was trumpeting employment growth. Well, of the 209,000 jobs created in the first half of 2024, fully 1 in 2 of them was a public sector job. In normal economic conditions, in normal economic times, 6 in 7 jobs are private sector and 1 in 7 is public sector. Instead, 1 in 2 jobs are public sector created. We've seen 26,000 more permanent APS staff added to the payroll, adding $5 billion annually to the government's wages bill. Real household disposable income has declined 8% in Australia since the first quarter of 2022. That's why everyone is feeling worse off, because they're paying more in taxes, because inflation is eating up more of their after-tax income, and because interest rates are higher. That is the worst performance in the OECD if you look back over the last 2.5 years. In the US, for instance, real household disposable income has increased by 3% since the first quarter of 2022. In Australia, it's gone backwards by 8%. And that's why people feel like we're in a recession, because we've had 6 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP per capita growth. The only thing that is keeping the economy ticking over, in notionally positive terms, is record-high immigration. We've got inflation, core inflation, at 3.5%, still stubbornly high. Senator Gallagher was trumpeting the headline inflation rate. The RBA has been very clear that they are looking at the core or the underlying inflation rate when they are looking at interest rate settings. And we just had Michelle Bullock, the Governor of the RBA, warn earlier this month publicly about the inflationary implications of the government's own policy, a shot across their bows. Yet we didn't have Senator Gallagher ruling out massive handouts or spending sprees prior to the election. Instead, she focused on a policy that the opposition, the government rather, should be embracing, which is zero-emissions nuclear energy, but instead they're shunning. So we have a government here that has no answer to inflation, no answer to the challenges of home ownership, no answer to the productivity challenge, no answer to high electricity prices and, incidentally, no reduction in emissions, who contests what the RBA says, what COSBOA says, what the Business Council of Australia says, what the Productivity Commission says, indeed what everyday Australians say about how tough living conditions are. Their only answer is some sort of alternative reality where we are told Australians have never had it so good. Their experience is quite the opposite.